What if the one plant that could feed your family for free was already growing in your front yard, and you were being fined just for letting it live? For centuries, it was survival food during famine, medicine for fevers and coughs, and richer in protein than spinach. But today, it's labeled a weed, banned by your homeowners association, and systematically destroyed by billion-dollar chemical companies. Why? Because in 1945, a weapons manufacturer needed peacetime profits. And the easiest way to sell poison was to criminalize food. This isn't just a forgotten plant. It's a forgotten weapon against hunger, disease, and drought. And what they did to erase it will blow your mind. It's probably growing just a few feet from your door. Small, unassuming, scattered with delicate white flowers. Most people walk right past it without a second thought. But this weed has more protein than spinach, produces gluten-free flour, and stays green when everything else turns brown. It doesn't ask for fertilizer, doesn't need pampering, and quietly enriches the soil beneath your feet. In times of famine, it saved lives. In times of peace, it's been outlawed. And in over 70% of American suburbs, simply letting it grow could get you fined by your homeowners association. The plant is called white clover, Trifolium repens, and it's one of the most resilient, nutritious, and medicinal plants on earth. Yet for some reason, you're not allowed to have it on your lawn. This isn't just about landscaping. It's about control of your land, your food, your choices. And the campaign to erase white clover wasn't an accident. It was a calculated strike. But who would want to eliminate a plant that gives away free food, free medicine, and free fertilizer? And what were they trying to hide? In 1945, the war ended, but not for the companies that had grown rich making weapons. They had stockpiles of unused chemical formulas designed to destroy crops, to starve enemy nations into surrender. One of these compounds was called 2,4-D, a selective herbicide created to kill broadleaf plants like potatoes and rice. It was meant to break nations. But when the war stopped, the factories kept running. Chemical giants now faced a new problem: peace. No enemy fields to spray. No wartime contracts. Just warehouses filled with poison, and no one to sell it to. Until they turned their sights on a new battlefield, the American lawn. They rebranded 2,4-D into a consumer product called Weed 1, the world's first commercial herbicide. But they needed a villain. Something they could frame as invasive, messy, and unacceptable. And there it was, white clover. A plant that had grown freely for centuries, now marked for extermination. The catch? Clover had never been considered a weed. In fact, it was in every bag of lawn seeds sold before 1950. Gardening magazines praised it. Homeowners expected it. It kept lawns lush and healthy without synthetic fertilizers. But that was the problem: it worked too well. So they launched a full-scale marketing assault. Clover wasn't oppos, T just removed, it was rebranded. And what happened next would erase 1,000 years of agricultural wisdom, in less than a decade. For nearly 80 years, the Scott's Company, yes, the same one that dominates garden centers today, sold white clover as a standard ingredient in their lawn seed mixes. It wasn't optional. Homeowners expected it. Clover kept lawns green, fixed nitrogen in the soil, required less water, and even resisted pests. It was the silent backbone of a healthy yard. But in 1945, Scott's did something unthinkable. They started selling herbicides containing 2,4-D, a chemical that kills broadleaf plants, like clover. This created a bizarre contradiction: the company was now selling the seed and the poison to destroy it. One product had to go. And it wasn't going to be the one with higher profit margins. By the 1950s, clover quietly vanished from lawn seed mixes. Not because customers complained. Not because clover failed to perform. It disappeared because it interfered with chemical sales. And most people didn't even notice it was gone. But Scots couldn't just pull it from shelves. They had to convince the public that clover, once beloved, was now a problem. So they weaponized marketing. Ads started glorifying lawns as perfect monocultures of pure grass, sterile, uniform, spotless green carpets. Clover was suddenly painted as a blemish, a sign of laziness, a flaw. And Americans believed it. The plant hadn't changed. Only the narrative had. But behind the glossy photos and catchy slogans, something far more dangerous was happening. Long before white clover was labeled a nuisance, it was a lifeline. In Europe, when grain crops failed and famine gripped entire regions, people didn't turn to labs or grocery stores. They turned to clover. Its leaves were cooked like spinach, its flowers and seeds ground into flour, and its roots boiled for nourishment. It was food that needed no tending, no tools, no money, and yet, it kept entire populations alive. Native American tribes knew its value centuries earlier. The Cherokee brewed it into tea to reduce fevers. The Iroquois used it for treating coughs and colds. It wasn't just a wild edible, it was medicine, passed down through generations without patents or prescriptions. It grows wild. It grows fast. It grows almost everywhere. And yet, somehow, we were taught to kill it. Why? Because a plant that feeds you, heals you, and costs nothing is a threat to every industry that profits from the opposite. You don't need fertilizers if clover fixes nitrogen. You don't need spinach if clover has more protein. You don't need big pharma if clover reduces blood sugar and inflammation. And that was the problem. But just when the last whispers of ancient knowledge began to fade, modern science uncovered something that couldn't be ignored. A discovery so powerful, it made clover dangerous all over again. For decades, white clover had been buried under lawns and forgotten history. But in 2018, modern science caught up to ancient wisdom, and what researchers found sent quiet shockwaves through the pharmaceutical world. A study revealed that white clover extract inhibited the enzyme alpha-amylase, the same enzyme targeted by acarbose, a well-known diabetes drug. But here's the twist, clover didn't just match the drug's performance. It doubled it. Lab tests showed clover's IC50 value was 25 micrograms per milliliter, while acarbose lagged behind at 50. In plain terms, this unassuming weed controlled blood sugar twice as effectively as a regulated pharmaceutical drug, and you could grow it in your backyard. And that wasn't all. Back in 2015, another study dropped an even more staggering claim. White clover extract didn't just slow the growth of human leukemia cells in test tubes. It stopped them. These weren't old wives' tales or holistic blogs. They were peer-reviewed studies published in respected scientific journals, ignored by mainstream media, but impossible to refute. This weed was proving to be food, fertilizer, and pharmacy all in one. It contained vitamins A, B, C, and E, as well as magnesium, calcium, potassium, and complete protein. You could eat the leaves raw, cook them like greens, steep the flowers into blood sugar regulating tea, all without a single prescription. So why aren't we seeing clover capsules on pharmacy shelves? Why isn't this being shouted from rooftops as a public health breakthrough? Because no one can patent a plant growing wild in your lawn. And while clover's health potential was being confirmed in labs, a deeper betrayal was playing out in the very soil beneath our feet. White clover doesn't just feed you, it feeds the earth. It's not a crop that takes from the soil, it gives back. Thanks to a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria in its roots, clover pulls nitrogen directly from the air and converts it into plant food, naturally fertilizing the ground around it. How valuable is that? A healthy lawn with clover can generate up to 150 pounds of nitrogen per acre every single year. At today's prices, that's around $90 of fertilizer, completely free, renewed endlessly without a single trip to the store. That's bad news for companies that sell fertilizer in bags. Because grass, on its own, is needy. It guzzles nitrogen to stay green. They flooded the market with before and after ads, the before image showing a natural lawn dotted with white flowers, the after a lifeless green carpet bought by dependency. And they told homeowners, you want the after. But what they were really selling wasn't beauty. It was addiction, to a system that bleeds your wallet and sterilizes your land. And it worked so well, they didn't even need to convince you anymore. Because soon, your neighbors would do it for them. By the time the 1960s rolled around, clover wasn't just gone from seed mixes, it was erased from memory. A new generation had grown up surrounded by ads, catalogs, and lawn care guides that showed pure grass as the ideal. Anything else, especially clover, was labeled messy, lazy, un-American. And the programming stuck. Soon, homeowners didn't need to be convinced by corporations anymore. They started convincing each other. Neighborhood pressure kicked in. Homeowners associations, now common in over 70% of new suburban developments, began codifying those aesthetics into law. If your lawn had white flowers, you weren't just different, you were in violation. You could be fined. You could be reported by your neighbor. You could be forced to tear out a plant that provides free food, free fertilizer, and free medicine, simply because someone decided it didn't look right. The justification was always aesthetic uniformity. But the reality? It was the criminalization of self-sufficiency. A yard full of clover could feed your family, reduce your bills, and support pollinators, but the system taught you to destroy it. And so, every spring, millions of Americans buy poison and spray it over life itself, without even questioning why. But the cost of this illusion isn't just financial. It's ecological. It's cultural. It's generational. And the collapse had already begun. For nearly 70 years, white clover was smeared, suppressed, and systematically removed. But something unexpected is happening. It's coming back, not because the industry changed, but because people did. Consumers are starting to question the programming. They're seeing the connection between pollinator collapse, drought-stricken lawns, and endless fertilizer bills. They're realizing that the plant they were told was ugly might actually be essential. The irony? Scott's, the very company that led the charge to erase clover, now sells clover seed again. They market it as a sustainable lawn alternative, a trendy eco-option for modern homeowners. But make no mistake, they still rake in billions selling herbicides that kill it. Because the system still works. Most homeowners still believe clover is a weed. Most HOAs still ban it. Most lawn care companies still treat it like a problem to be eliminated. And generation after generation, that story is handed down like gospel. White flowers mean your yard is failing. But the tide is turning. People are digging into old records, reading the science, and most importantly, looking at their own lawns with fresh eyes. They're watching bees return. They're using less water. They're saving money. And they're waking up to a truth that was buried for profit. Clover isn't a weed. It's a survival tool. A complete protein. A living fertilizer. A medicine stronger than modern drugs. And it never stopped working. We just stopped listening. So the next time you see those little white flowers in your yard, don't pull them. Remember what they really are: food, medicine, and rebellion growing right beneath your feet. White clover isn't just a plant. It's a mirror. A mirror that reflects how far we've strayed from common sense, how easily beauty can be redefined, and how quickly survival tools can be criminalized when they threaten profit. 3 generations ago, this plant fed families, healed sickness, and nourished the earth without permission or payment. Today, letting it grow can get you fined. Why? Because a chemical weapons manufacturer needed a new market. And the easiest way to sell poison was to make food look like filth. But here's the truth they never wanted you to see. The clover didn't change. Only the story did. And if that story can be rewritten once, it can be rewritten again. So look out your window. If you see a patch of white clover, you're not looking at a weed. You're looking at resistance. You're looking at freedom. And maybe, just maybe, you're looking at the first crack in a system that's been built on lies. The question isn't whether clover belongs in your lawn. The question is, do you still believe the people who told you it didn't?